Yeah, I left it on the couch and not on my way out.
Father Jorge Martinez is looking for me.
I was just telling him Mexico beat South Korea, but that was expected.
Where was soccer?
Soccer, so now they will play Sweden on the 27th.
Okay, we'll finish with the fathers of the church, and then we'll go into the analysis of the prayers for ordination, okay, of deacon, priest, and bishop, okay? That's gonna be good. Okay. So we pretty much know what the fathers of the church taught. The early fathers of the church taught about holy orders. But we get a shift to a more monarchic ministry. And by monarchy, I don't mean that the bishop is a king, he is the head, but he becomes more of a defined head. And so ministry is not as attached as the community as it was. Now it becomes sort of its own thing. Okay. Now we can have big abuses and excesses, like the situation with Pope Alexander VI. And all those bishops, titular bishops that were not real bishops, that received the title of bishops because it came with a lot of benefits, but they were never ordained. They weren't just administrators and somebody governed, somebody ministered to the church on their behalf, because they were kings and dukes and whatever, and they received the titles. Okay, I remember this very, very specific case. King Ferdinand of Leon in Castile, in Spain, the husband of Queen Elizabeth, the ones that sent Christopher Columbus to discover the Americas. Well, the king was a little bit free and had some children outside of marriage, and to ensure them a nice future, may appoint them abbots and archbishops or whatever. Even though the king never had a vocation. Remember that Pope Alexander VI had a son that he made a cardinal. That was never a priest. That's an abuse. Those were abuses, huge abuses. That's what made Luther so angry. Okay, so it's because it's a false understanding of ministry as an honor, a dignity, and not having anything to do with the community. So you have to keep attached to the community. Okay, it's very difficult. You know, we just went through two different kinds of bishops here in Salt Lake City. We have Bishop Solis, who is a stay-at-home bishop. He's here, and he's designing programs for us, and fixing this and fixing that, and da-da-da-da-da-da. He's always here, always here, always here. You know? And he's very clear about what he wants and how he wants it, and I love that, okay? I might not like it. There are things that I go like, bueno. But it's good that he's telling us that, and you know, remember that we manifest our union with God in our spirit of obedience. We had Bishop Wester, who was a very good bishop. I totally love the guy, but he understood his episcopacy more of a minister for all. And he would be out there serving the church at large in the United States in different positions and making the name of Salt Lake City well known, you know, because of it. He was very good at that. And he governed his church very well. Of course, he had Monsignor Fitz to help him. But he's a different type of bishop. Right? Very close. Every time he came to your parish, he stayed until you basically closed the door of the parish, saying goodbye to each one of the kids that received confirmation, and getting to know them. He will remember their names. He was like that. He was a very good bishop. But he understood his ministry in a different way. So you will see that a lot.
In a different way, what was different than the normal bishop?
No. It's two different styles. It's the same normal bishop, but it's two different styles. Bishop Solis is more a stay-at-home bishop. He's always here. He ministers to us. He very seldom goes out. He's not on the national thing. And no, and Bishop Wester was the other way. So.
Did you see that with deacons also, Father?
Oh, yeah.
Maybe their roles of charity are more outside the parish. And You spend more time.
But
with God than
the
the
wonderful
parish.
thing about the diaconal ministry is that you pretty much can define that. It's a part of being a deacon, okay? You don't, there are deacons that are only deacons for the worship, for the Eucharist and the sacraments, that's fine. There are deacons that do not so much of that, but, do other stuff in charity work and stuff, and it's perfectly correct. Although the needs of the diocese will weigh on you, and you will have to move along with whatever the diocese asks you to do, your parish asks you to do. You will be seeing that a lot, okay? So some of you may end up in jail ministry, some of you may end up in hospital ministry, some of you may end up in parish ministry, some of you may end up in Catholic community services, and all of that is being a deacon. So, we'll see what happens. Yeah, I think this guy wants to end up at Notre Dame and be a professor. Yeah. Anyway, so with like Deacon Owen Cummins, he's a deacon of the Diocese of Salt Lake City. I think he's the dean of studies in Mount Angel Seminary. That's being a deacon. By the way, a very good deacon. Anyway, it's the Holy Spirit. Saint Ignatius of Antioch. Who is the bishop for Saint Ignatius? Uses the Trinitarian model, and he says, what the Father is in the Trinity, so is the bishop for the church. And he invites the community of Magnesia, he was writing a letter to them, to live in harmony under the presidency of the bishop. And I underline the word presidency because he understands that the bishop presides over the community, and that you have to be united to the bishop as you are united to Christ. Okay? But he uses that Trinitarian model. And it's a beautiful model of the church. The local church mirrors the Trinity, okay? And in the same way, the Son never did anything on his own or through his apostles, but did everything in the Father. So the local church should never do anything without the bishop and the presbyters. Okay? That's a beautiful idea. Okay? So I was telling you, I lived with Bishop Wester, and I understood Bishop Wester very well. I still don't fully get Bishop Solis, but I like what he's doing. He's working for us, he's working with us. What am I going to do? Do whatever he says. And it feels nice, it feels beautiful. It's like, okay, Bishop, you want your deacons to show up half an hour before you show up to a parish. Well, let's do that. That's what he wants. You do exactly that, and you're right, you're correct. You're following Christ. Okay? Okay, Bishop, you want your deacons to go to be a certain way. You want your priest to do a certain thing. That's what you do. And that's where Christ is going to be served. Okay? When you go along with your bishop. In the Trinitarian ecclesiology, the bishop is the principle of unity. Just as the Father is the principle of unity and all life in the Trinity. Okay? So you remain around your bishop, you remain faithful to your bishop, you remain obedient to the bishop, you are obedient and faithful to Christ. Period. Okay? That is pretty much the idea of the Second Vatican Council, right? The bishop is the source, the source of unity in your church. Okay? Yeah. You see how the cathedral is designed here. Monsignor Manning did a fantastic job. We were blessed to have him as the rector of the cathedral when the cathedral was renovated. Where's the chair of the bishop? In the middle of everything. He unites the whole church. So you have the assembly of the faithful here. Okay? You have the altar here. You have the place for the ministers, deacons, and presbyters around here. Who unites it all? Boom! The bishop. St. Ignatius. You see? Beautiful. Monsignor Mannion was an outstanding, he's an outstanding theologian. He's wonderful. Presbyters for St. Ignatius of Antioch. The presbyters appear as the apostles with the Lord. And the faithful owe them the same obedience as the apostles with the Lord. The presbyters are united to the bishop as the strings to the lyre. You are not on your own. You cannot be a priest on your own. You remember Father Karapi?
Yes.
What was his problem?
Sort of free will.
Exactly. He was too much on his own. What happened? What happened?
He fell.
Exactly. So You are never a deacon on your own. You're always under the guidance of your pastor, under the guidance and protection of your bishop. You're never on your own. You are not your own deacon. You're a deacon with him. Okay? So that's important. That's very important. Okay? Priests tend to do that a lot. Tend to do that a lot. And you know, when I go elsewhere, I said Mass in Jalisco, in one of the little dioceses over there. And when I introduce myself, I always have to say, I'm a diocesan priest of the Diocese of Salt Lake City. It feels nice by the way to say that. Okay? You have to say, I'm a deacon. I'm a permanent deacon of the Diocese of Salt Lake City. When you're ordained a deacon, you're not ordained a deacon for the whole church. You are ordained a deacon for the Diocese of Salt Lake City. And in that way you serve the whole church. And that's how it works. Okay? So you are not an international deacon, you know? Even though you might fly to Australia every day. No, senor. No. No. You're a deacon of the Diocese of Salt Lake City. Okay? Yeah. Deacons for St. Ignatius of Antioch. He states, all need to venerate the deacons as the Lord. Ooh, you guys get a lot with St. Ignatius. The bishop as God the Father, and the presbyters as the Senate College of the Apostles. The deacon is an icon of Christ for his attitude of service, his commitment to others, and service of charity. Wow. So according to St. Ignatius of Antioch, the deacon gets to be an icon of Christ because of this. The deacon is to imitate the disposition of Christ, who came not to serve and not to be served. Okay? So when you're exercising your service on behalf of Christ, you are being an icon of Christ. Remember that Jesus never said he was a priest, but he said he was a deacon. Okay? In Mark chapter 10, verse 45. Okay? I'm in the midst of you as the one who serves, as the deacon. Okay? I had that in my holy cards when I was ordained a deacon, and my brother deacons that were ordained with me hated me. Because they wanted me to put something that you have been called today, or you have been chosen. And I thought, no. Because if I think that way, then I don't work. I'm not a real instrument. That St. Thomas Aquinas is going to tell us that later on today. No, I am a server. And if I serve, then I continue with the mission. If I don't serve, I break the mission. Okay? Remember that's what Pope Benedict said? I'm going to serve the church by praying for her. He continues with his mission. The worship of the church. The main functions of the hierarchy is to summon the community around the one altar for the Eucharist, which has to be presided by the bishop or his legate. So we get to see this. That happens every day at the parish, you know. The priest is saying Mass, and what does he say? And with the Pope, with our Pope Francis, and Oscar, our bishop, and all the clergy, okay? Which, by the way, I don't like the English translation of that, because in the Spanish translation you say, with the bishop, the presbyters, and the deacon, and the entire people that you have chosen. You describe the hierarchy in Spanish. In English, you know. Universo clero. Universo clero, that's the phrase in Latin. Universo clero, with all the clergy. No, it's better to describe it, the clergy. But that's how it's translated. There's nothing we can do about it anymore. The main function of the hierarchy is to summon the one community around the one altar for the Eucharist, which has to be presided by the bishop or his legate. So when the presbyter is saying Mass on behalf of the bishop, he signifies that by mentioning the bishop. So somehow when I say Mass, Bishop Solis says Mass through me. Okay? And when the bishop shows up to say Mass, do I have to appear and be the co-star of the show? No. I have to fade away. Why? Because the true shepherd is there. We had this funny case in Mexico a few years ago. St. John Paul II came to beatify Juan Diego. Okay? I was a little seminarian back then. And I was a part of the service. And he came to the Basilica of Our Lady of Guadalupe. And so they were forming the procession. Okay? And then they formed the procession in a very strict way. I mean, auxiliary bishops, titular bishops, residential bishops, archbishops, cardinals, and then the Pope. Okay? So the nuncio comes and he wants to take the place right next to the Pope. And he places himself right next to the Pope. And the master of ceremonies comes and says, you know, Your Excellency, please accompany me. And he starts to yell, I am the representative of the Pope. I should be lining over there. And he puts him with the archbishops. Yes, but the Pope is here and you represent no one. Of course, that's what you have to do. Yeah, because you say Mass on behalf of whom? The bishop. And if the bishop is there, who is the high priest? The bishop. Okay? I love that because we didn't like him. So, but the MC from the Vatican told him that. I was lining up next to him. He was telling him, you represent no one, and throw him into the archbishop. Go. And the poor guy was like, oh. You know, Italians are very dramatic, you know.
So who was the deacon at that mass?
2 transitional deacons from the Archdiocese of Mexico. Because in
Even back
Mexico we
then?
have no permanent deacons, huh?
Even back then.
Oh yeah, yeah. 2 transitional deacons.
Mexico has no permanent deacons?
No, it's beginning to happen, just now. I was consulted by the Bishop of Cuernavaca about this because they are looking up to us because we have done this for many years. Okay, and here they asked me what's the main problem with the deacons, with the permanent deacons. You know what my answer was? The priests. You need to bring them along with the formation process of the deacons so they get to know each other, understand each other, and then support each other. Otherwise, they will be seen as aliens. And they are not aliens, they are part of the hierarchy. Okay? These are aliens, but no, not you. Anyway, the worship of the church. The main function of the hierarchy then is the Eucharist, and then the same thing applies to baptism. Okay? St. Thomas Aquinas is going to explain that to us in the term in persona Christi later on. Tertullian, the new terms. I like Tertullian, he's a lawyer, so he will be very precise, just like lawyers try to be, you know. So he's going to introduce some new terms to theology to understand ministry. Number 1, order. Ministers through ordination belong to a specific order or estate in the church and serve a specific role as bishop, priest, presbyter, and deacon. Okay? I put priest, presbyter because that's equivalent, it's the same thing. Okay, so you belong to a different estate in the church by ordination. You are not set apart, properly speaking, but you are introduced to a new family. Okay? And all deacons in the church are your brothers, just like all priests in the church are my brothers. Okay, and it's you share the same function through ordination with them in the church. Plebs Christiana, or the people of God, those baptized members of the church that don't hold holy orders. Okay, those are the people of God. Okay, are you members of the people of God? Yes, but you have a specific mission as deacons, or you will have specific missions. Clerus, sacerdotalis, priestly, the worship function of those who have been ordained. Okay, you are exercising as a priestly function when you're offering the prayers of the community, the sacrifice of the community, presiding over the sacraments. That is a priestly function. Remember that the church didn't speak about these things because we were away from the Temple of Jerusalem. So we're beginning to develop this little by little under the guidance of the Holy Spirit, of course. But we're beginning to do this, and Tertullian is helping us to understand this. Clerus, clergy, denomination of the bishop, and by extension, presbyters and deacons. You're members of the clergy. Remember that one of the most specific reasons for the abuse cases in the church is clericalism. When you place the priests and the ordained ministers up above, all over there, and you give them a special place and a special power, and they believe that, they can turn around and abuse. So you have to give them respect, but you don't have to place them over there, or you as a member of the clergy, you have to place yourself aside, because then you become disconnected with the community. You can become an abuser very easily. Okay? This is what happened in Chile. This is what the Pope told the bishops from Chile. You did this. Huh? You abuse your clerical state, and that's the reason why you not only fostered this, you also covered it up. And he said he was against that culture. Okay? And he accepted the resignations of the bishops of Chile that were in those cases, and there are more to come, of course, and it could happen in the entire church. Okay? So one of the things that Bishop Solis hates the most is clericalism. When we think that we are part, that we're special, that we are members of the clergy, because we're not. We're servers of a priestly nation, the people of God. Okay? Anyway. Whew, it's complicated, isn't it? Okay. Tertullian helped us in that way. What is his understanding of the bishop? Tertullian's understanding of the bishop. Okay. Jesus is the high priest of God the Father. We know why? By nature. We already know this. The New Testament already told us. He participated his priesthood to the apostles on Pentecost. Bishops participate of this as well. Bishops are the high priests of the church. Not only all liturgical action depends on the bishop, but the teaching and the discipline do as well. The power of the bishop is universal in the church by his priestly function. Okay? So this is very important because this is a definition, already a definition. Remember that we had, presbyters, bishops kind of like together. Now we're beginning to understand what a bishop is. Okay? Well, he is a high priest, just like Jesus and the apostles. He participates in the high priesthood of Jesus Christ. And he is in charge of the liturgy. He is in charge of the teaching. He is in charge of the discipline of the church. He also has a universal power. Okay? Please, you're going to be dealing with this and you don't know when this is going to happen to you. So anyway, this bishop shows up one day to this parish for a marriage, Bishop so-and-so. And the secretary goes like, well, we cannot have you do the marriage at this parish because you don't have the proper delegation. The bishop was very nice and very kind and said, may I speak to the pastor? Or what do I need to do? Please let me know. Well, there's not much you can do about it because, it's time for the wedding and you don't have the proper delegation. And then the bishop, tries to reach out to the pastor and it's impossible and that. But for some reason, the vicar shows up. Bishop, how are you doing? Da, 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 da. And she goes, Father, Bishop doesn't have the proper delegation for the marriage. Bishop doesn't need a delegation. He's a high priest. He can do marriages, funerals, baptisms, whatever, in the whole church. They don't need a proper delegation. Huh?
She should have known that, though.
Of course, but she didn't. But you guys, now you guys do, okay? You might have a bishop show up in your parish one day, Bishop Wiegand can come, marry somebody. And then you're not going to go like, oh, Bishop Wiegand, you don't have the proper delegation. No. You just tell him, Your Excellency, welcome to our parish, and you prepare the paperwork at that moment with his name on the certificate and have him sign it and give it to them because he's a high priest. Okay? His power on the church is universal. He limits that as the head of a church when he gets appointed bishop of so-and-so. But he's the bishop in the whole church. Okay? Okay? Priests and deacons, no. Because we belong to a bishop, we belong to a specific church. And if we go to another church, even in our own diocese, we need the proper delegation to do stuff. Even though here in Salt Lake City we have a lot of freedom. Okay? We do. We just have to notify the pastor. But the bishop, no. The bishop has universal authority over the church. Okay? Wow. You don't know, it might be the case. Presbyters, he designates them as presbyteri, señores, and presidentes. Presbyteri because that's their title from the New Testament, which means elder. Seniores, it means that they hold a specific position in the community. They are advisors to the bishop, they represent the bishop to a certain capacity. And presidentes because they preside over the Eucharist on behalf of the bishop. Okay? Okay, here we go. Now we're going to go through the different prayers of consecration for bishops, priests, and deacons, and try to see the theology behind them. Okay? So who wants to play bishop today? Okay? He wants to play bishop. How about, I was going to say the other name, but I'm going to say Jeremy.
You're sea chicken?
Sí. I was going to say chicken, but no. Jeremy. Jeremy, do you wanna ordain the bishop? I mean, just read the prayer for the bishop, and then we'll discuss it.
God the Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, Father of mercies and God of all consolation, you dwell in heaven, yet look with compassion on all that is humble. You know all things before they came to be. By your gracious word you have established the plan of your church. From the beginning you chose the descendants of Abraham to your holy nation. You established rulers and priests, and did not leave your sanctuary without ministers to serve you. From the creation of the world you have been pleased to be glorified by those whom you have chosen. So now pour out your Spirit upon this chosen one, the power that is from you, the governing Spirit, whom you gave to your beloved Son, Jesus Christ, the Spirit given to him, to his holy apostles, who founded the church in every place to be your temple for the unceasing glory and praise of your name. Father, you know all hearts. You have chosen your servant for the office of bishop, and he be a shepherd to your holy flock and a high priest, blameless in your sight, ministering to you night and day. May he always gain the blessing of your favor and offer the gifts of your holy church. Through the Holy Spirit who gives the grace of the high priesthood, grant him the power to forgive sins as you have commanded, to assign ministries as you have decreed, and to loose every bond by the authority which you have gave your apostles. May he be pleasing to you by his gentleness and purity of heart, presenting a fragrant offering to you through Jesus Christ, your Son, through whom glory and power and honor are yours, with the Holy Spirit in your holy church, now and forever.
Okay. Isn't that beautiful? So the source of the ordination of the bishop is God the Father. Okay. He's the source for all the three ordinations. But they emphasize the role of God the Father because of the theology we just went through. Who told us this? Remember? Who used the Trinitarian model? Okay.
Ignatius.
St. Ignatius of Antioch. The bishop is in the community where God is in the Trinity. Okay? So you see this reflected here. It's beautiful. He is appealing to whom? To Abraham. What kind of a priesthood is he going to exercise? It's similar to Abraham, yes. You know, he is the father, the founder, the source of the community. It's beautiful, but I think it's in a line that continues this service and this ministry, and you can see in this, you know, Moses, and you can see in this all the prophets, you know, because it's you never left your sanctuary unattended. Okay? And now what's the sanctuary? The sanctuary is not the cathedral of Salt Lake City. The sanctuary is the church. And so who is going to attend the sanctuary? The bishop is going to attend the sanctuary. Okay? So it's amazing. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful depiction of what the bishop, the source of the ministry of the bishop is. Okay.
So
Now, yes.
an archbishop has to ordain a bishop, right?
No. Any bishop can ordain another bishop.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Okay. So, but we're very respectful of the tradition. So, since the head of a province is the archbishop, we always honor the archbishop. And for presiding matters, he presides. Remember when Bishop Solis was installed, that Archbishop Cordileone presided over the Eucharist at the beginning? He was wearing his pallium and a different type of mitre. He had the crozier. He came in and took the cathedral, began the mass and stuff. And then when Bishop Solis was called to be seated at the cathedral, because that's what makes him the bishop, that he seats at the cathedral. Him and the nuncio came and grabbed him, literally, and took him and helped him to sit down, and Archbishop Cordileone gave him the crozier. We honor that. That's tradition. Tradition that goes back to the time of the apostles. So we do that. And it's amazing because that's when the apostolic succession takes place, right? Because it's one that comes and continues the mission. The monks are very good at this. So the abbot dies, then another abbot does the mass. But the abbot that is doing the mass uses the crozier of the abbot who died. And then the archbishop goes and buries him, or the bishop goes and buries him, and he uses the crozier of the abbot who died. And then the crozier is left somewhere to be honored, the staff, the pastoral staff. And then when the new abbot is elected, they give him the same one. The mission continues. And beautiful, isn't it? Yeah. Well, your church is beautiful. You'll see that. You will be a part of that. One of you is going to be sitting at the cathedral for the installation. And guess who gets to choose who it is? Again.
Me?
Yeah.
Don't you and Drew choose?
No.
Oh, there's
No,
so
at the
much.
cathedral-
What are you doing for dinner next Saturday? Huh?
No.
New car?
What's your
For the
favorite
big
candy?
ceremonies.
I don't want it.
For
I
the
don't
big,
want it.
for
I'll
the
buy
big
you the
ceremonies,
favorites.
Oh.
the cathedral chooses. Yeah.
You're still picking names out of the hat for ours.
For yours, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, never mind.
No pressure, Karen.
No. And yeah. For the beginning, you chose the descendants of Abraham as your own nation, and then he goes on. The consecration goes on, and now pour out upon your chosen one the power that is from you, the governing spirit. So that's the spirit is given to the bishop to govern the church. Okay, which spirit, which governance? The one that comes from the Lord Jesus Christ, which is understood as what? Service. Okay. And then it's the same spirit that was given to the apostles, okay, that founded the church everywhere they went. So it's the mission. Remember? We already talked about the mission. So it's this mission. Who makes this mission possible? Okay, this mission, the Holy Spirit. Okay? And then there's a description of what the bishop is going to do. Okay? May he be a shepherd to your flock. Okay? That's the main thing he does. A high priest, blameless in your sight, ministering to you night and day. May he always gain the blessing of your favor and offer the gifts of your holy church. So he's the main liturgist in the church. Through his spirit he gives the grace of high priesthood. Grant him the power to forgive sins. So it's in his hands. Yeah? When priests get the power for confession, the delegation for confession, we get the delegation of the bishop. He gives it to us. He tells us, you have my delegation for the forgiveness of sins. It's not ours, it's his. Okay? Forgive sins as you have commanded, to assign ministries as you have decreed. Okay? So when the bishop sends you somewhere, he is exercising his ministry. That's his job, to assign you a parish, a pastor, a minister, whatever, a ministry for you in your case. So that's his job. And to lose every bond by the authority which you gave your apostles. Okay? So he can give you any dispensations and anything that is needed to free you from any obligation and stuff. Pope Francis is making this possible because now he's granting annulments. Now the bishop is granting annulments, not the Vatican. And he has this in his authority. It's a part of his. It's a part of his ordination. Okay? Okay? May he be pleasing to you by his greatness and purity of heart, presenting a fragrant offering to you through Jesus Christ your Son. And then it goes on with the doxology. And it's beautiful because he as a high priest, he gets to exercise this, and the first one who has to offer himself on behalf of the community is himself. Okay? So bishops are very, very zealous of this. I mean, they pray a lot and they try to live a very, very simple and edifying life and stuff, It's beautiful. They inspire the communities. Now Jeff needs to ordain a priest. Okay?
Come to our help, Lord, Holy Father, Almighty and eternal God. You are the source of every honor and dignity, of all progress and stability. You watch over the growing family of man by your gift of wisdom and your pattern of order. And you have appointed high priests to rule the people, who chose other men next to them in rank and dignity to be with them, to help them in their task. And so there grew up the ranks of priests and the offices of Levites, established by sacred rites. In the desert, you extended the spirit of Moses to 70 wise men who helped him to rule the great company of his people. You shared among the sons of Aaron the fullness of their father's power to provide worthy priests in sufficient number for the increasing rites of sacrifice and worship. With the same loving care, you gave companions to your sons' apostles to help in teaching the faith. They preached the gospel to the whole world. Lord, grant also to us such fellow workers, for we are weak and our need is greater. Almighty Father, grant to this servant of you the dignity of the priesthood. Renew within him the spirit of holiness. As a co-worker with the order of bishops, may he be faithful to the ministry that he receives from you. Lord God, and to others a model of right conduct. May he be faithful in working with the order of bishops, so that the words of the gospel may reach the ends of the earth, and the family of nations, made one in Christ, may become God's one holy people. We ask this through our Lord Jesus Christ, your Son, who lives and reigns with you in the Holy Spirit, one God, forever and ever.
Beautiful. You see how this is different, right? So, and the other one, it was Moses, it was Abraham, okay? And that was sort of the idea from which the idea of the bishop came. But in this case, it's going to be the different moments and the history of salvation in which, even though there was a head that presided over the people of God, that help got helpers, okay? So it's the Levites, it's the children of Aaron, it's the helpers of Moses, it's those and the helpers of the apostles. So we're going to see this later on today, what is the place of the presbyters in the church. But in this case, those are the sources of this type of ministry. Okay. Now it's very specific. He says, Almighty Father, grant the servant of your the dignity of the priesthood. Okay. So he's being inserted in the unity in the dignity of the priesthood, but not in the same way the bishop is. Why? Because the bishop is the high priest, and this is a priest to help the high priest. So there's already a relationship here. Renew with him the spirit of holiness. What was the spirit for the bishop? Governance. What is the spirit for the priest? Holiness. So it's a different emphasis, okay? As a co-worker with the order of bishops, may he be faithful to the ministry that he receives from you. Okay? So he's a co-worker. Remember that relationship, presbyter-bishop? Okay, he is expressed here beautifully. He's a co-worker with the bishop. Lord God, and be to others a model of right conduct. May he be faithful in working with the order of bishops, so that the words of the gospel may reach the ends of the earth. So what is the main job of a priest? Preach the gospel. Exactly. So the main function of a priest is not the worship sacrifice, even though that's the emphasis of St. Thomas Aquinas. It's to preach the gospel. Okay? The ends of the earth and the family of nations made one in Christ. What is the second one? Unity. Work for the unity of the church. Okay? May become God's one holy people. And then it goes on to say. Okay? So it's a different ordination. It's beautiful. It's a different ordination, and it's based on those collaborators that Moses and Aaron and the apostles and the 70 and all of that, because they helped the main high priests in this case Jesus, in this case the bishop, to exercise their ministry, okay? So is it a ministry that we hold? It stays, it remains, of course, but is it ours? No, it's a gift. Remember the high priest that received the ministry that already existed, and then he exercises it, and then he goes away and the ministry continues? It's the same way for us, okay? Okay, sir, now you do the deacon.
Almighty God, who you present with us by your power, you are the source of all honor. You assign to each his rank. You give to each his ministry. You remain unchanged, but you watch over all creation and make it new through your Son, Jesus Christ, our Lord. He is your word, your power, and your wisdom. You foresee all things in your eternal providence and make due provision for every age. You make the church, Christ's body,